create the materials for our Ghost Knight. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and go into the materials folder, and let's create two new materials. So we're going to material, and we're going to call this Ghost Knight underscore body, and we'll do one more, create material Ghost Knight underscore sword. Okay, and let's start out with the Ghost Knight body. So the Ghost Knight body is going to use a different shader other than this diffuse. We've gone ahead and provided you with the shaders, so you'll find these in your project files folder, and the shaders that we're using are going to be toon shaders. Now these basically have just a high ambient color, so it's a white color, and it washes out any of the shading, kind of giving us that painted look. Okay, so to get started with our first material, let's go ahead and select it, and let's change the shader from diffuse to DT shaders toon. Here we can access the textures, so we can put in a night texture. So I'm going to put in one of those textures there. It looks like I have a double there, but that's okay. So there's the diffuse. Let's go ahead and put in the spec map. And then now what we can do is go ahead and drag and drop that onto our character. So go ahead and drop that onto things like the helmet and things like that. You may have to get some different angles trying to get them onto the proper pieces. Sometimes it doesn't want to go onto that. So let's go ahead and get a little bit closer. There we go. And it's not wanting to go onto the body. Get a little bit of a different angle there. Sometimes that particle system gets in the way. Okay, let's make sure that we get this piece around the back side here, because it's going to be the mask. And then we need the other glove and the feet. And there we go. Alright, so there is our Ghost Knight with all of his materials applied. Now, looking at the shader properties that we have things like the gloss amount, so we can adjust that if we need to. We can give it a higher gloss to where it's a little bit more shiny and spread out, or we can make it really focused and very, very glossy. I'm going to go ahead and stick to around the 50% mark, giving it that shiny look, but not quite, not to a point to where it's just extremely polished. We have our diffuse ambient, which is washing out our shading, giving us that toon look. And then we have this outline color. And this outline color can be used in a couple of different ways. We could use it as kind of that blue aura color that we saw in our concept art. And so we'll set that up to be right around there. Let's go ahead and set up a value of like 0.01. Make it a little bit thicker. Back up and you'll see our character coming in. And so that'll just kind of give us an indication that he's alive and he's got that ghost aura energy going on there. Now if we don't want to use that, we can always turn it down to 0 and then we'll just leave it alone. Okay, so either way will be just fine. Okay, so let's do 0.01 on that, and that's just going to add to the particle a little bit later. Alright, so there we have our materials set up for our ghost. Let's go ahead and set up the material for the sword. Now we don't have the sword in just yet, but we'll go ahead and we'll take care of that here in just a moment. So let's go ahead and take DT shaders, and we're going to do toon on that one as well. And we have our sword diffuse and our sword spec. Okay, same sort of thing. If you wanted to do that outline on that, you can. You're more than welcome to. And you'll notice that my R color is all the way down to 0, G and B, and the alpha are at 255 for this color. And then I'll set that to 0.01. There we go. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to get our sword in here and get it attached to our knight character. Alright, so let's go ahead and bring up a folder here, and we're going to go to the FBX files folder in your project files. And we're going to go to Ghost Knight. You'll see this sword.fbx file. Let's go ahead and left click and drag that into our models folder. And it's going to go ahead and import that. Okay, so then we can just go into that, and you'll see it creates a material for our sword, the sword FBM. That's okay. We'll go ahead and we'll leave it just the way it is for right now, but we do need to go ahead and set up the model. So everything is good except for the import materials. I don't want to do that. I'm going to apply that. You'll see that disappears. Let's go to our rig. we don't have a rig for this. We're going to set that to none, hit apply, and then animations is going to be obsolete because of that. So we'll leave that just the way it is, and then I'm going to left click and drag that into our scene. And let's grab our material that we just created, so the Ghost Knight sword, and we're going to drop that onto that game object. Now again, I'm kind of having a hard time, so let's make sure that we get close enough, and then we'll drag and drop that there. Perfect. Okay, so now there we have our sword. Now the sword, this game object is going to go onto our character. Now in order for this to work properly, we need to create a sword game object, because if you take a look, the center point of our sword, or the pivot point for the sword, is right in the center. Let's go ahead and switch that over to pivot, and you'll see that that changes. So we could go ahead and use this as the game object, or we could create a parent game object for that. Either way will be just fine. I think the size on this is pretty good, so let's go ahead and just parent it to our character here. So we're going to take the sword, and we're going to go up to our root, and we're going to go to one of the hands. So we're going to go to the chest, the shoulder. That's going to be the left shoulder, and it is going to be in his, I believe it's in his right hand to start out. Yes. So we're going to go to right shoulder, forearm, and wrist, and bind wrist, and there's the hand. Okay, and that's where it's going to belong. So let's go ahead and take that sword, and let's drag and drop that onto that joint end hand. And then with that, we're going to go ahead and zero this out. So zero out the positionings on all this, and then all we have to do at this point is go ahead and rotate it. So hit E on the keyboard with your sword selected, and I'm going to hold down Control, rotate that 90 degrees, and it looks like the rotation is probably going to zero out there. So zero on that rotation, and then we're going to rotate along the X, something like that. And let's go ahead and just get that into position, and that should get us pretty close to where we want to be. So just kind of fine tune that, and there we go. Alright, so now that that is parented, whenever we hook up animations to our character, that's going to be on there, and he'll run with the sword just like he's supposed to. Alright, so in the next lesson, we've got all of our materials set up. In the next lesson, let's go ahead and bring those